Now, back on the subject of common mistakes, what do you have to add, Yolanda, in terms of some of the most common mistakes you've seen and potentially done on your own that you recommend our audience avoid?
One that I've done, because I'm naturally good at speaking, is not preparing enough. So there have been times that I'm like, I'm just gonna go and wing it. I know this subject, or I think I know this subject, and I'm just gonna go wing it. Or I didn't check to see exactly who was gonna be in the audience. And so now I'm talking to a different group of people that's not even in the audience. And so then you gotta stop and be like, wait a minute. Even midway, I've had to stop and kind of calculate in my brain, okay, this is not working. I'm losing the audience. How do I bring them back in? And so you got to be able to know how to react, especially if you do something like don't practice. So I'm glad you brought that up earlier, because preparation is so important so that you don't fall into the trap where you're talking but not talking to the right audience. And so that's important. And then the other thing is, if you're on a large stage, using the stage instead of just standing in one single point and not talking to the whole audience. That's another mistake that I have made in the past. And the other mistake that I've made, this is simple, but this is something I've had to work on, and I'm still working on, is holding the microphone. Because I'm one of those people, I like to just talk and not hold anything. And so I'm better with a lapel mic or something. But if I have to hold a microphone, then that's when nerves come in. And so learning how to hold the microphone, using any kind of technology that you may have, and using it the right way, and not just referring to it. So like if you have a clicker, not continuing to just hold the clicker and not move. And it's so many things that you have to do, and it all comes with preparation. So I would say not being prepared.
Yeah, excellent. And being prepared to flex. I know I said that before, but you made me think of something that, happens a lot at the Women in Technology conferences, depending on the number of people that you're going to have on stage at any given time. You may be told in advance you're going to have a lavalier, but then in the moment, the AV person may tell you, you know what, we've got to have all the lavaliers for the palace, so you're going to have to use a mic. So, be prepared to adjust and be comfortable with different types of technology that you may just have to navigate. Shoot, Yolanda, you said something that sprung in a thought, and it's just escaped me. Darn it. It'll come back. Bill, were you going to say something?
I'd drop in with a quick story that connects to some of what you said. Maybe it'll jostle loose the other piece while I'm
there. You go.
But the piece about preparation is so key. If you're ever saying to yourself, I got this, that's a bad sign, right? So one of the very first talks that I ever did, I had a book that was coming out. It was my very first book. It's called Right Risk, 10 Powerful Principles for Taking Giant Leaps with Your Life. It's about risk-taking, personal risk-taking. And, I was younger, and now I had an audience that was going to have like 100 people from a church in Atlanta, and it was a singles group. So I got invited to speak on my risk-taking book, and I thought, well, that's awesome, because hey, when you're single, you got to get out there, and you can't be on the wall. You got to be the person to get off the wall and ask for the date. And I'm like, this connects to risk-taking. So that was my starting position, right? So I'm like, all right, I got my deck, and I know the points. I just wrote the book on it. It was easy peasy. I'll just go in there like a half an hour beforehand. I get there a half an hour beforehand, and then people start trickling in at about 20 minutes beforehand in walkers. That a lot of people are they're in their 70s. Now, that it was, the singles were widowers, not young bucks out there trying to make their way in the world. And now I had to pivot. You talked about being adaptable. It freaked me out. Suddenly I'm starting to perspire. I got through the situation. Instead, I turned it much more conversational, hearing stories from their lives about risks that they took that made all the difference. So I came through it unscathed, but man, did I learn a lesson about knowing your audience.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's a good story. That's a good story. But that's all about pivot, which is so important. Know how to pivot.
It is, yes. So you both have talked a lot about preparation. I mentioned it at the outset. Can you get a little bit more into how-tos? How do you prepare for a presentation to ensure your delivery style will resonate with your audience? Yolanda?
So for me, several ways. So one thing is standing in front of a mirror and actually going over what you're going to talk about. Visualization as well. So I use the mirror as one technique, go through my whole presentation and continue to go through it, run through it, look at the key points, act like it's an audience there. Visualize that you're talking to your audience. Think about if you make a mistake, how will you go ahead and correct that mistake while you're in the middle of your talk? Because a lot of times people will freeze up when they make a mistake, or if they forget something, then they'll freeze up instead of realizing that the audience doesn't even know that you messed up until you do that. And so just knowing, if you mess up, how you're going to react to it. So doing those is very key. And then the other thing is bouncing it off of somebody. Get somebody who you know that is, okay, so if I'm going to be doing a talk to veterans, I'm going to get somebody who's a veteran. Then I say, hey, do you mind if I spend 10, 15 minutes with you? I got this presentation that I need to do. I want to bounce it off of you. Can you please give me some good feedback? So that way you can get feedback to know what you need to adjust as well as you're preparing for your presentation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Anything you'd add, Bill?
Well, just to, really reinforce the point, the same points. I'm definitely going to have the upfront stakeholder interview with the people who are asking me to come in, right? I'm going to ask them about desired outcomes, messages they're wanting to reinforce, what led them to come to me to bring me in, and is there something in particular about my message that they wanted to underscore? Other speakers that they've had that they thought did a great job, and those that didn't. And what caused those things to not work out the way that they wanted them to work out. So there's a lot of upfront just conversations with those folks. And then depending on their ability to do so and my time investment, and part of it is an investment, I will want to do something like Yolanda suggested. So for example, I had a group that I was speaking to down at Disney, 300 executives from a company that makes parts for water treatment facilities. I know nothing about that world, but I do know about courage. So I asked, could I go on a visit to a water treatment facility with one of their techs? And they arranged for that. There was a tech that about an hour and 15 minutes away in Greenville, South Carolina. I spent the day with the guy. I kid you not, Carrie, this is the God's honest truth. We're friends today. And I did that talk probably 10 years ago. And I learned a couple of things from that guy, right? That I not just related to the water treatment world. By the way, when I went to the water treatment facility, we rolled down our windows and I was like, oh my God. And he goes, yeah, that's the smell of money in their world. I get that, that is. But it got me closer to their work, and it made it tangible. It made it real, and it made me more invested in them to do a good job for them. So that kind of preparation matters a lot.
Wonderful. Wonderful. One thing I would just add, especially if you're speaking to a large group that, represents very, very diverse perspectives and backgrounds, is you can always do that overhead polling at the beginning, just with a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with X? So you get a quick kind of frame of reference that helps to guide you how, what assumptions you should or should not make. And also, we're doing so much in a virtual environment. You've got the chat and polling and all other techniques at your disposal to learn more on the spot. And
with another one as well, Carrie, and that is, I do think there is value in typing out what you're going to say. And that's not so that you get up and then read verbatim what you wrote. But so that you have a certain flow, you know the word choices, but it's not enough to read it. You've got to then print it. You got to read it 3 times. Then you got to print it out. But you got to get the words out of your mouth. Because I remember I one time typed out something and it said, in the story that I had, it said a couple of phone calls. Well, when you actually say that out of your words out of your mouth, it comes out as a focal of cone falls. And it didn't come out right. So you have to change the wording, and you actually have to get the words out of your mouth in your rehearsal. It's not enough to just rehearse by reading it and thinking you're giving the presentation, because you're not.
100%. And what we often say is how we write isn't necessarily how we speak, right? Yolanda, you talked about the importance of making it very conversational. Sometimes writing can be a little bit more formal. So yes, read it and then actually practice delivering it out loud. Like you said, Yolanda, in front of a mirror. And David Binder added, a mirror is a very, very useful technique. Another incredibly invaluable one, as we know, is recording yourself and then playing it back. That's the best way to try to experience what you have to say and how you say it from an audience's perspective.